I mean, you know, he's asking for the whole panel to talk about his case. And I don't even. But, I mean, I read some of the stuff, but I'm trying to tell him that moving forward as we do this, we can, you know, look at all that.
You're in Claudia, that's the second panel. So you all will be.
So I just mentioned that he, you know,
It's Mike's.
yeah, he
So
co-founded.
We'll let you know. Just get comfy.
Okay.
Being the one that that could be a matter also.
All right, that's it. Just that, and that we need to stay in touch to support, get him out. That's it. That's basically it. Because what he's asking for is too much. This is not a Kwame program, so to speak. That's what he's looking for right now.
Yeah, well, anybody want to get out.
I understand. You know, that's why I asked you, you know.
So where are we going to?
I think we're gonna have you here and they're gonna see you on the camera on that monitor.
You want to come see how it looks?
Yeah.
Ryan, you can still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
All right. Did you put any kind of notification that we were starting in 10 minutes?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Oh, so maybe we should. Sekou, do you want to stand? Do you want to stand or sit?
Sitting is always better for a home man.
Okay, well, then what we can do is we can have him sit here, because you see here, there's not going to be anybody here, and it's just going to be him standing over on the side.
That's like, well, I'm gonna start the program.
What's that?
We need to start the program.
Okay, so how you gonna do it?
Yeah.
You want to do it from here? Or you want to do it
Here or
from here?
sit there?
Okay, you can sit here.
I thought you wanted me to be seen.
No, you'll be seen here too.
Let me know when you settle, and then I'll.
Okay. Right there. I'll take the rubber bands off. At least off of one of them.
I don't know.
All right, that's okay. Just take it there. I think it was there.
Right here's good.
This is uncomfortable chair here.
You want me to sit here?
In front of that one. Just hold on for a second. Make sure he's rolling.
Yeah. This is being filmed.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Did you get me to go? Say it again? Good sit. That good? I need to press this, got it.
yeah,
I don't have a
there's a.
It's under here.
you're supposed to be here.
No.
No.
There we
Y'all could really lost the outline so y'all can get out of stuff.
We're ready.
Right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Peace, everyone. All power to the people and free them all. My name is Brother Shep, I'm a veteran of the original Black Panther Party right here in New York. I'd like to welcome you all to NYU Law School's Vanderbilt Hall, where we are co-sponsoring, along with the law students here, the New York City Liberate Our Elders Forum. This is part of a 3-day event that we've been doing, which was the brainchild of Brother Kwame Beans Shakur, who is the co-founder of Prison Lives Matter. And we'll be hearing from Brother Kwame during this program to get some more ideas and direction in terms of where we're going. Our main focus today is dealing with our elders. Throughout the 60s, the 70s, and the early 80s, those members of the Black Liberation and New African Independence movement were heavily involved in our liberation and our freedom. Many were captured and put into these dungeons. Some were sent into exile. And of course, we lost many in battle and in combat against this fascist government, the United States of America. We're talking about nearly 60 years ago. And for some have been locked up over 60 years. Prior to this, we've basically been focusing on releasing our political prisoners and prisoners of war. But as time has gone on, they have become elders. Most of them in their 70s, many in their 80s. And so in expanding our campaign, what we have all come together to do beginning this weekend is to look at bringing all of our elders home. Because if we bring all of our elders home, we automatically will bring our political prisoners and prisoners of war home, because they, of course, as I mentioned, are also elders. We're going to be talking this evening about medical neglect, and we're going to be speaking about elder abuse behind the walls against not just our political prisoners and prisoners of war, but all of our elders. And we all know that the majority of those who are in these prisons are Black, brown, and oppressed people. So it behooves us to make sure that we bring all of our resources, all of our organizations, all of our communities together to bring our elders home. And we all know that the families need to be involved in that. So you'll be hearing from family members tonight. You'll be hearing from professional medical practitioners tonight. You'll be hearing from legal warriors, we'll call them, attorneys at war. They'll be speaking tonight. And also activists and organizers. We'll be looking at the laws that exist today and changing that legislation. So tonight, we want you all to sit back, get your pads, get your pencils, take your notes, but above all, make sure you get the information how to get in touch and in contact with all the organizations that are presenting. This again is day number 2. We will have the recordings available for everyone from yesterday's New York City press conference, and of course our opening plenary that was held last night, which even reached even more audiences because we dealt with the whole issue of our indigenous brothers and sisters and the whole fight against the settlers that came in here 500, 600 years ago, Leonard Peltier, also Blanco, Brother Hernandez, the Ricardo movement. So all those things will be able to see that. We're going to end tonight basically making sure we talk about how we came to this point, which is here all along. In 2021, there was an international tribunal against genocide against Black, brown, oppressed people in this country, following the legacy of Paul Robeson and others. An international jury or panel of jurists found the United States guilty of genocide against Black, brown, indigenous people. Moving forward from there, we have formulated what's called the People's Senate, which you'll hear about, and some of you heard about it last night from Brother Jihad Abdul Mahmet, who is currently in South Africa. Oh, some of us still call Zadia, myself included. So we're moving forward. That's what this is about. This is not just a panel, a conference, a forum. that we go to and just go back home and talk about it and forget about it. We are organizing to move forward. And that's what this is about. So that said, I'm going to call up our first speaker. He's a former political prisoner of war, Black Liberation Army. He's a veteran of the original Black Panther Party. And he's my elder and many of us elders that we learn from. Baba Sekou Odinga.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wow.
Peace, power to the people, greetings. Abaragani, what's up? Greetings to all. Glad to be here. Glad to get a chance to speak a little bit about elders in prison, freeing our elders, and continuing the work that our elders have started. When we think about our elders, we should think about the work that put them in there. Many of them come out of the different formations, as Brother Shep said, like the Black Panther Party. They were feeding our children. They were walking our elders to the banks, make sure they get back with their funds. They were organizing housing programs to hold those slumlords accountable. And they were fighting back. They were fighting when attacked. Most of our officers throughout the Black Panther Party times were attacked by so-called officers of the law, police, pigs, whatever you want to call them. So many of them decided that they were going to fight back. They were not going to just lay down and die, just accept being shot at and not shooting back, accept being brutalized and not fighting back. And a lot of that brought many of our political prisoners of war into those prisons. They're being charged with attacking police, fighting back, really. So that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about and when we say our elders, those are the elders we're talking about, our political prisoners, our prisoners of war. Of course, we want to release all our prisoners out of these joints, especially Black, Brown, and Indigenous, because almost none of them ever had a fair trial based on the laws of this land. Very, very, very few of us had what you call them, juries of our peers. Very few, you know. So we want to find a better way of dealing with our problems in our communities. I'm not going to just say all prisons should be shut down immediately, but I would say that eventually we want to see them all shut down. You know, obviously, when you get rid of one institution, you usually need to create another one, something better, something more humane, something more educational, something that we can feel, if not good about it, at least not be afraid that our children might wind up in there. We can look for, we want to have institutions that's going to help our people, not just punish them, not just oppress them, not just hold them down. So when we say free all of our political prisoners, we're also talking about all the prisoners, period. You know, because we do need a more humane type of structure, type of institution that can handle our youth, our elders, our adults, our children. We have to find a better way to do what we're trying to do today in terms of dealing with the problems in our communities. A couple of years ago, we had a international tribunal charging the United States with genocide. Spirit of Mandela coalition actually put it together. We brought in international jurors from around the world, 9 of them, who sat and listened to the evidence and listened to the witnesses who charged the different aspects of the the different aspects of the charges. And then after a weekend of testimony and evidence, they deliberated for, I think it was 3 or 4 days, however many days it was, but they came back with a guilty verdict. They found the U.S. guilty of genocide against Black, brown, and indigenous people. But of course, most of us knew that anyhow. Most of us knew they were guilty before we even started the process of charging them. But we wanted to make it public, open, and after that, we wanted to build on that. We didn't want that just to be the sum total. The U.S. is guilty of genocide. As I said, we know that. We've been know that. We know this country was built on genocide and slavery of African people. So we decided, Spirit of Mandela, along with others who joined with us, to push a program called the People's Senate. And the People's Senate is the goal of the People's Senate. Let me just read it to you. The goal of the People's Senate is fourfold: help publicize and promote all of the local work that everyone is already doing. What we're talking about is dealing with organizations, structures, people, activists who are already working, doing positive work in the community, and working together, pulling them together, bringing them, creating vehicles, creating organization that will allow people to find out what others are doing in their community, in their region, and let them find out what they're doing and support each other, organize themselves so that they'll know what's going on in their community, and they can support the positive work going on in their community, and they can have others who want to support the positive work that they're doing. B, make links between individuals and groups and potentially organize common projects to assist in developing collaborative efforts. C, develop new initiatives that can unite us on a national and international scale. Elect a People's Senate, bringing forward the leadership of Black, brown, and indigenous communities and providing an arena for discussion, exchange, and developing solutions to the problems faced by all. Our vision is a Senate which will be a representative body of the people and their organizations, elected by local meetings or gatherings based on geography or constituency or on groups of people engaged in common work. It will then meet on a national level to discuss how this goal of developing a united struggle might be pursued. Election meetings can be regular meetings of already established groups of collectives, or they may be ad hoc caucuses created superficially for the purpose of electing senators. So this is what came out of the guilty verdict of the people's tribunal, international tribunal that Spirit of Mandela Coalition created. Many groups have joined up already, you know, groups like Jericho Movement, Black Panther Party Alumni, Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition, People's, what they call it, Black Prisoners Lives Matter, groups like that, and many other groups. We're asking and inviting all to check us out, check out the work that we're doing, help us do the work. It's a new organization, it's a new structure, so we're looking for ideas and work efforts to bring this together. We all talk about the need of unity. We're trying to develop a vehicle we can unify under. We can start doing work collectively. You know, we have brothers behind the walls, brothers like Kwame Shakur, who was one of the organizers of Black Prisoners Lives Matter. He also helped bring this here formation together here that we're having today, yesterday, and tomorrow. That's one of the reasons, or that's a good example of the reason why we need to free all of our prisoners, not only our political prisoners, or even our social prisoners. Because this young man here, he's a genius. We got all these brilliant brothers and sisters locked up behind these bars that have so much to give that we're not offering them a chance to do that. This brother here that I was just talking about, Kwame Shakur, he's already putting forth work. He's not waiting for us to organize nothing for him. He's organizing something for us. You know? So I don't know if I done used up my time. But anyhow, again, I invite those of you who are listening to check out spiritofmandela.org and see what we're trying to do with the people in it. Join us, help us. Those of us here in this room with me, you can sign up over here. We have a little information there that you can take with you and read, and you'll find a lot more on at the link I just mentioned. Not people centered, spiritofmandela.org. But thank you. I'm a little slow, but I'll get it out. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, Baba Sekou. And we're gonna go to a quick 3-minute transition as we bring in the next group of speakers, and Baba Sekou will be coming back with the other panel for any questions that people might have. And so we're gonna move on to call up our next group. And if Brother Ron is in that cyberspace world, please plug in. We thought you would be here personally. If you are, please plug in so we can make sure you're part of this next discussion The next discussion is dealing with changing legislation and the law. Changing legislation and the law. We'll call up King Downing Esquire, who will be moderating this panel. King Downing is one of those activist attorneys or attorneys in war that I was talking about earlier. He actually worked with the Black Panther Party as a member of our community organizing crews. And he's been definitely a jewel in terms of our organizing with the Black Panther Commemoration Committee, our alumni committee. He's currently working with our campaign to free Kamal Sadiki after we were successful in getting Russ Maroon home, Shoatz home, and he'll be moderating this panel. Again, Karan, if you're around, please plug in. The next person I want to call up is Brother Jose. Jose Hamza Saldana is the executive director of RAP, Releasing Aged Prisoners right here in New York. Jose is also a former prisoner here for many decades. And he's going to tell us what RAP is doing and what other campaigns are doing. And then last but not least, online, we have Jalil Muntaqim, another former political prisoner of war, Black Liberation Army, veteran Black Panther. And he's going to be talking about the different campaigns, again, to change these laws, particularly looking at 13 forward. Most people should know, if you don't know, about the whole aspect of slavery was never abolished in this country officially. Read that 13th Amendment. I'm sure Jalil will touch on that, but just basically it says that slavery is abolished unless you are in prison. And we all know after Reconstruction and during Reconstruction, who was captured and locked up to become the next wave of slaves behind bars. So Jalil, if you're here, is Jalil here? I know I saw him earlier.
Yeah, Jalil was here.
Yes,
Yes, my brother. Yes, my brother. I'm here.
All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to all right, I see you, brother. All right, so I'm turning the mic over to King Downing, and we're gonna discuss how we could change these laws.
All right, all power to the people. All power to the people. We're standing room only in this room, so I want to hear plenty of noise. So if we can mute the speakers until they're called up. And I want to welcome everybody, if you're just joining us, to our elder celebration by Prison Lives Matter. And I want to thank the people who are here in the audience. I want to thank our virtual audience. I want to thank Prison Lives Matter and all the co-sponsoring groups and all the organizers, the people who've been doing the work to make this happen. So we're going to end slavery, and that's the goal of this. And for this particular panel, we're going to look at legalized slavery. And most of you know what that means. That's the 13th Amendment. But before we start, I want to give honor and recognition to the people whose land this belonged to. And this were the N.Y.C. Ramapo. And all of this area, New Jersey, southern part of Manhattan was all theirs. Above Central Park area was the Wappinger, but this is N.Y.C. Ramapo land, and we honor them and their warriors who also fought the same fight that we've been fighting. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about, most of what we're going to talk about is going to be the 13th Amendment, because almost everything flows out of that. It was ratified in December of 1865. I know many people know it by heart, but I'm just going to read it in case there are folks who haven't heard it. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, shall not have, whereof the party, see, I'm legal language that I don't even speak, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the U.S. or any other place subject to its jurisdiction. Now, the second section is important because Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And that'll be part of the conversation. People forget that Congress still has the power still has the power to change this. And I just want to give a little bit of background about the whole issue of incarceration behind bars. The first important thing is that incarcerated workers, which is the word that we use, are not counted in any of the statistics for any U.S. government labor agencies that collect any of it. There's no information whatsoever on it at all. And so most of the work that's being done is in the form of maintenance of prisons. The second form is public service or public works. The third one is private industries, some that are run by state and federal governments and others that are run by major corporations. And the last is agricultural. And so prison maintenance takes up about 80% of the labor. Prison state industries about 7%, public works 8%, private industries 1%, and agriculture is 2%. And of course, there's a whole issue in race around the way these work assignments go, because whites are more likely to get to go outside to do public work, incarcerated labor. Black people are more prevalent to do the inside, so-called incarcerated labor, the maintenance. And the pay is 38% higher for white incarcerated workers, for men, than Black incarcerated male workers. And for women, the pay is 33% higher for white incarcerated women workers versus Black incarcerated women workers. And all of this paints a picture where we're seeing, for example, a study by the ACLU, and I'm going to give the citations, and if anybody wants them, if you put them in the chat and you put your email address, I'll send them to you, because this is all evidence-based. They try to claim these things aren't happening. It's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. Nobody's surprised at that. Incarcerated workers produce $2 billion worth of goods and $9 billion worth of services every year. It's an $11 billion total, and that's 4%. That's 4% of the labor workforce in the country. 4% of the production in the country is being done by incarcerated workers. Examples in California, $1 an hour for anybody hear about that? Raise your hand if you did. $1 an hour for incarcerated people to fight forest fires. And guess how much California saved by doing that? They saved $80 to $100 million a year by paying them to risk their lives, and some of them have died. Core Craft, which is the state operation here, makes $50 million a year on the labor of incarcerated people. So this is something that has just gone over the top. Now, overall, the average wages, and anybody here who's been behind bars can testify and correct this information, because remember, I got this from reports that came from the government sources. So they may be reliable, they may not be. The average overall wage across the country for non-industrial work, which is maintenance and those things, is 13 cents an hour. For industrial work, producing products for the
You guys have to unmute.
the time to take comments from people, we'll be able to do that. So the last part of this is, and I want to give some of the statistics. We got 1.2 million people who are in prison, 600,000 in jails, 3 million on probation, 800,000 on parole. The Department of Justice is saying 45% of them are people of color, but that sounds low to me overall. If anybody has any other statistic, in New York, 50,000 people incarcerated, 11,000 in prison. Last thing that I'll bring up is As I said, it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. And 76% of the incarcerated workers say that they face sanctions if they don't work. So that's the classic definition of slavery, if people don't have any choice, including solitary confinement for not working. And a 2005 study showed that 1.5 million incarcerated people are in labor or at labor in any given year. And as I said before, that's 4% of the workforce. So as one of the people I looked up to, Kwame Ture, said, we are past the time for description. The time is now for, close enough, prescription. So in our conversation today, when we have our guests on, we're going to invite them to describe the situation from their points of view, as whether they're people on the inside, people doing the work, or both. And then we're going to have a conversation with everybody about description. What are we going to do about this? Because this is not church on Sunday. I don't want to go home feeling better that I know the facts if we don't have a plan for moving forward. So let's go to our in-person guest. Jose Saldana does not need introduction to many of the folks here. He's the executive director of Release Aging People in Prison, has a lot to say about his own experiences, but also what's going on here with the 13th Amendment and all of its stepchildren and any legislative efforts here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Jose. I'm with the Release Aging People in Prison campaign, and I just want to tune in that word, aging. Everybody's going to age in prison. Two things is going to happen. You're going to age and get out when you're an old man, or you're going to age and die in prison. And in reference to being considered a slave, in New York is a typical state where the Constitution actually defines us as slaves. You know, so while we as a people were emancipated, I mean, we don't call it that, but you know, that's what they call it. You know, the idea is that they can give us slave wages. And we're talking about pennies for decades, 40 years of working for pennies. And if you're released, you have no access to unemployment compensations. You're excluded from the whole concept of workers in America, excluded. You know, you're exclude people who probably work the hardest of all people for pennies, and to exclude people, and that this goes even deeper than slave wages. You know, when people are talking, I'm gonna stay with New York because that's what I specialize in. When people are talking about older Americans in New York, they're not talking about us in prison. We're excluded from that conversation also. We're excluded from every conversation that deals with basic human rights and human privileges that average American gets. You know, when I came out of prison, I tried to go on vacation. And the parole officer told me that I couldn't go on vacation because that required me to go overseas. So I challenged that because I'm saying, I'm an American worker now. You know, you classify me as a worker, so I'm entitled to a vacation like every other American worker is. And they succumbed to it and actually said I was right. But only because I was released from prison. We don't get a vacation. And you could work for 4 decades straight and not even a sick day. You know, so we're talking about real slavery in our prison system. So the 13th Forward is a remedy to this. Unfortunately, we didn't get the support that we really needed. The super, you know, we have super majority. I just want to go into the political landscape for a second. In New York State, we have a super majority in the Senate and a super majority in the Assembly. The leader of the Senate, Madam Leader, is Senator Stewart Cousins, a Black woman. The leader in the Assembly is the Speaker of the House, a Black man. Supermajority in both houses, people of color leading both houses, and we can't get legislation that actually eradicates slavery and puts it back into the history books. This is a sad situation we're in, but we have the responsibility, and this is where RAP comes in. You know, we are a grassroots organizing organization. We are boots on the ground. We change the narrative. You know, when people talk about incarcerated men and women, they look at that as murderers, rapists, robbers. We change the narrative, make them scholars, because we have scholars in our prison system. We have elder people who have been responsible. We know most of them. They're responsible for actually educating and empowering an entire younger generation in our prison system. And they did it with no compensation. None was, not even the hope of a reward. And most of them are dying in our prison. You know, so this is what we're talking about. Men and women who are deserving, men and women who have already demonstrated their worth as human beings, that they should be released. The real answer is not higher pay. The real answer is liberation. Free these people. They have demonstrated their value to us. Because without them, without Sheikh Noah, without Basir, without Abdul Majid, I won't be here. I won't be the person I am today. So they have already demonstrated, and you know, and sadly, men I just mentioned have died in our prison system. So we do not want more of them dying in our prison. We have to be out in our communities and uplifting them, so that our communities could stand behind us with power, with community power, and demand an end to slavery in the New York State prison system.
That's a great point to transition on, because we're going to get into the action items. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And I want to turn to our next speaker. By the way, if you're just tuning in, you can tell I do radio. I'm also a host of WBAI, Good Morning Nueva York, but this is like a broadcast, right? So you may just be tuning in and wondering what's going on. And this is the Prison Lives Matter Elder Law 3-day conference. We had a press conference. We had a plenary yesterday. There are 3 cities that are holding similar type events with people talking about ways to move forward. And as I said, not merely the description, but also the prescription for this work. So I'm going to bring up our second guest who's joining us virtually. And what we may ask, I may ask somebody if, well, let me ask this. Can you all see the screen? Okay. Are you good with it? And is our cinematographer okay with it as it is? Good. So we'll keep the lights on. And I'm honored to have our next guest on here, who along with Brother Shep came on to talk about this event on my show. And that's Jalil Muntaqim, Black Panther Party veteran, Black Liberation Army veteran, 49 years inside, came out and started doing the work like his feet had been here on the ground outside the whole time. He's also part of the Spirit of Mandela, one of the key bright lights in that, leading to what I call the Genocide 2.0 hearings, which Jose also testified at. And that's go to Spirit of Mandela and look at the work that's already done, laying the groundwork internationally for what's getting ready to happen now. So with great pleasure, Jalil Muntaqim, make some noise.
Well, can you hear me?
We're getting some feedback. I don't know if you've got an open mic somewhere.
Yeah, I have 2 computers on right now. And I can let me shut down one.
Great.
And, okay, can you still hear me?
Yo,
There you go.
We got some
But I can't get the video up. Can you see my picture?
Yes, yeah, we got you.
Okay. All right. Let me
hold on 1 second, Jalil. Ryan, could you get rid of that? Can he do that or you?
Which readers also?
Who's host? It's good now.
No, you got somebody on the screen that ain't supposed to be there.
Who's host? Get that X in the top right. Just that's that out. No. Cancel.
Cancel.
Minimize it. That arrow to the top.
Good.
Go on. Right there. Yeah. Close.
There we go.
Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, Jalil.
Yeah, I guess I'm good. Yeah.
Floor is yours.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, peace, positive, Baragani, Jumbo, Haping, Guten Tag, Paz, peace, Shalom. Whatever your language is, I greet you in peace and solidarity. I'm Jalil Muntaqim. My brothers, it's important for us, brothers and sisters, it's important that we understand that this we are trying to achieve here is something historic. It's novel. It's novel in as much as our goal and objective is to move our struggle away from the ideas of civil rights and moving towards the ideals of national liberation and independence. We feel that based upon the decision of the International Tribunal that found the United States guilty of charges of genocide in 5 categories, that we need to remove ourselves from any future harm. And that's what the goal and objective of the People's Senate is, to organize institutional bodies that is capable of ensuring institutional change that will move us from harm from continued practice of genocides that essentially eliminates, dehumanizes, degrades, and devalues our very existence, particularly Black, brown, indigenous people. Now, part of the course of this, of course, is the issues of mass incarceration. The United States is found guilty of genocides on the issues of mass incarceration. And we know that mass incarceration is genocidal because it puts young people in prison in the early age, right? In the 60s, because you can be 16 years old and you can be charged as an adult and given life in prison, right? Until you're released in your 50s, 60s, and 70s. I spent 49 years in prison. Fortunately for me, I was able to bear a child prior to going into prison. Otherwise, I would have been 68 years old when I came out of prison trying to build a family. So what I'm saying is that for many of those who are incarcerated in the penal slave system of mass incarceration, they will not be able to reproduce because they're sending us from school to prison pipeline. We're sending this as schools as the penal slave systems as a part of population control, right? Understand that's genocidal, all right? And that's what we're suffering. So part of the process in terms of challenging the system of mass incarceration is to remove the incentive for mass incarceration, free labor, right? And so 13-4 moves as a campaign, a national campaign to challenge the system of penal slavery by demanding of those individuals who we are now identifying as incarcerated workers, right? Changing the narrative, changing the name, changing the behavior, right? Because what? Thought precedes action. And how you think determines the factor of what you're going to do. And if we continue to have people identify themselves as prisoners, and we know that the word prison is synonymous to a slave, according to the law, not what Jalil says, not what 13-4 says, not what the Spirit of Mandela says, it's not what a Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition says, it's not what the Spirit of Mandela says, it's what the law says. The law says that prisoners are slaves of the state. So therefore, we need to change the name from prisoners, identifying our people on the inside as incarcerated workers. Because they're workers. Once they get inside the system, what do? They put them to work, right? For pennies on a dollar, if that, right? Slave wages. They're slaves, right? The law says that, not what Jalil says. And so what we're doing, we're challenging mass incarceration by challenging the law in this case, in this instance, by taking the incentive out of free labor and demanding that our people inside get equitable compensation for their labor, right? At minimum wage, right? And at that point, in understanding, and when we change the law, and 7 states have done so thus far, New York State is hopefully will be the 8th or the 9th state that will change the law to end penal slavery, right? Once we do this across the country on the mass, we challenge mass incarceration in a very substantial way, right? Because there's no need for putting our young people in prison for life and working them and trying to get profits from them when in fact they are receiving monies that they can send home to their babies, send home to their families, right? Save for their upon their return back to the community. And not only that, but they wake up every morning, right, to go to work for equal compensation for their labor. That changed the mindset, right? So that when they return home, what are they gonna do? They're gonna go find a job. They're gonna go to work and continue to receive the kind of value that they have learned by learned behavior. They have learned over the course of doing 10 years in prison, 5 years in prison, learned behavior to get up, go to work, get equal compensation, equitable compensation for their labor so they can pay their bills, take care of their families, and etc. We change the dynamic of the penal system as we understand it to a point whereby we can demand, as the brother said, to abolish, as Sekou said, to abolish the prison system, right? So the course of action is tactical. 1340 is tactical for strategic goal of what? Abolishment. So we understand the broader scale, and we're doing it under the principles and concepts of building towards also what we call the People's Senate, an entire new national body of determining what our goals and objectives are. Not only that, but how we are to be governed. We understand that this system that we now live in is not only genocidal, but it's a corporation, right? The U.S. government is a corporation, and based upon the Supreme Court decisions, and you know they're becoming more regressive in the decision, more reactionary decisions. But in the case of what is called citizen action, or I can't remember the name of the course in the case, right? But they said that corporations are people, right? They identify corporations as people. So we identify corporations as people. Then basically what they're saying that this government functions as a corporation in behalf of other corporations. When they say in behalf of the people, for the people, and by the people, they're talking about corporations. And that's the reason why the majority of us who live in this territory, 3,000 by 6,000 miles, that has been misidentified as the United States, which actually real name is Turtle Island by the indigenous, right? We are actually slave laborers for this entire corporation. Right? So we understand how we've been complicit, right, in the understanding of this and the function of this government, this corporate entity, this settler colonial corporate government. And we said we're going to remove ourselves. We're going to divorce ourselves from this system based upon the decision by an esteemed body, international jurors, that is determined that the United States have engaged in genocides against Black, brown, indigenous people on 5 categories. Mass incarceration is one of those categories. And so we have identified a method, a tactical initiative to remove ourselves from the system of corporate exploitation, right, of mass incarceration, and challenging the system moving forward. Part of the challenge is building the People's Senate. Now you heard Sekou raise provide some information regards to the People's Senate. And I'd like to just go over very briefly what Sekou introduced. Now we have a document, and I'm gonna show this to the screen to everybody here, right? It's called, let me see if I can see it here. All right, there you go, right? If you can see that, right? But it's the People's Senate, right? And it's recruitment and membership, all right? The recruitment manual. And in the first page of the introduction, it says here, the People's Senate strategic initiative stemming from the 2021 International Tribunal held in New York City and the weekend of October 22nd to the 25th, wherein the United States government and its states were charged with and found guilty of genocide against Black, brown, indigenous peoples. And yet we must do more than simply celebrate the international panel of jurors' guilty verdict. Our job now is to organize a meaningful resistance to this genocide, rooted in the Black, brown, indigenous communities themselves. There are many ongoing and vital organizing efforts across the country, and many local, some focus on single issues, others broader. All could be assisted by networking, linking the various efforts, informing the many forces of the work of others, and amplifying our voices for all, right? So we got to find some unifying principles across the country that we can identify and say, yes, we agree with that. Yes, we'll unite on that. And yes, we will promote that. Various organizations and groups, and one of them being releasing our elders in prison, right? Our comrade inside Kwame Shakur and his Prisoners Lives Matter campaign, Prison Lives Matter organization, was very instrumental in putting this together. Understand now, this is not only New York, this is in California and Chicago, right? So we're gonna build this thing into a national determination by Prisoners Lives Matter, as well as building the People's Senate. It goes on to say that thus, the Spirit Mandela Coalition, which organized the International Tribunal, is calling for the formation of People's Senate that can help construct and network to link these efforts and, in the best cases, become a platform through which the struggles of each might become the struggle of all. Speaking out against genocides and other abuses with a collective voice and developing a program of action to address various issues and struggles that can unite and strengthen our collective voice. The People's Senate, over time, will be working to provide a model for an alternative to existing governance and show how a body might work that truly represents the people and strives to put decision-making processes in their hands. So we want to build something that's going to be for the people and by the people and for the people. And that's going to be the People's Senate, right? And mass incarceration, our challenge to mass incarceration is 13 forward, right? So that's our first process in terms of building the People's Senate, is applying the issues of mass 13 forward across the country. We will identify other national campaigns that we will address for healthcare, for housing, for education, and for other ills against police violence in our communities. That based upon the five issues that the international jurors has found the United States guilty of in terms of genocide, and removing ourselves from these conditions of genocide. So that's what the People's Senate is going to do. And the 13 Forward campaign is as part of the 13, as part of the People's Senate, right? As we challenge mass incarceration, which was one of the issues that the United States was found guilty of genocide. Mass incarceration is genocidal. Keep that in mind, right? The penal system that we have today is in fact a slave system based upon the law. Now, what the law says, 13th Amendment of the United States, that Brother King Downey read, right? The 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, and in the cases of North Carolina versus North Carolina versus Jones versus North Carolina Union, and also Ruffin versus Commonwealth, that the court in the Supreme Court says that prisoners are in fact slaves of the state, right? So understand that and what we're doing here and what we're promoting across the country. And so for those of you who are on this Zoom today, right, I'm asking you to invite 5, 10, 15 more people to join this campaign. You are now, if I'm adopting you, this is what I'm going to do. I'm deputizing you, right? I'm deputizing everybody on this webinar, right? I'm deputizing you to be advocates for 13 Forward and be advocates for building the People's Senate, okay? And so this is our goal, this is our charge, this is our game plan moving forward. We don't know of any other national stratagems that's being promoted by as many organizations as we have in the Spirit Mandela Coalition, all right? So this is it, this is unique, right? Keep in mind also in terms of history, right? There's only a few white men that created the United States, that established the United States, a few white men, right? We know many of their names, okay? So what says that the people cannot rise up on this empire and build something new? We have to have the imagination to do so. We have to have the goal and the heart to do so. We have to have the love of humanity to do so.
Sheriff Jalil, Jalil, this is one of your deputies, Sheriff Jalil. We're gonna check on our next speaker, and then we're gonna see what you've done is. Walaikum salam. You have moved into our action section because you're already recruiting the people and suggesting a program that needs to be done, and we're going to follow up with that. And we want to see if our last speaker is in the house or maybe online virtually. And we're looking for Karan Aline, who is a staffer with Councilman Charles Barron, who was invited and is Karan here?
Karan is not on the Zoom as far as I could tell.
Not on the Zoom. Well, Karan, if you can hear us and you're one of the phone numbers that we don't recognize the name, please acknowledge yourself and we will confirm that it's you by calling the number that it is before we open up the microphone. So
unfortunately, because of the Zoom bombers, people cannot unmute themselves.
No, that's why I said raise their hand, and then we would call the raised hand number and make sure it's who they say they are, because we do have them. So that being said, I'm going to open it up to questions or brief comments. And because this is the action item part, I just wanted to read a list, just following along, and this may be an additional charge. I was part of the group that put together the legal documents for what I call the Genocide 2.0 hearing, and I've already started to work on the next round that have to do with the challenges around the 13th Amendment, because the campaign that's going to happen here, for example, in New York, and I'm going to ask for Jose's comments in a second, would be whether there could be legislation or referendum that would get prison labor and forced labor banned. But under the international conventions, here are three, and then maybe you can comment on whether you think that might be a way to do this. So under the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, it speaks out against labor exploitation and also cruel, inhumane treatment without any distinction for whether it's behind bars or not behind bars. So we have the Universal Declaration for Human Rights that could be a part of a vehicle to challenge this internationally. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights says, quote, all persons deprived of liberty shall not be deprived of liberty, but will be treated with humanity. And forced labor, under nobody's definition, could be a form of humane treatment. Then last, we have the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, that forced and compulsory labor are violations of the right to work. So we have at least 3 international vehicles so far that we could use to press this as a follow-up to 2.0. So now,
Brother King,
We need to
Brother
close.
King, permit me, Brother King and Shep, permit me to add just one more, right? Very, very briefly, right? Also, the Convention Concerning the Abolition of Forced Labor of 1957, which notes the referendum of slavery of 1926, the Supplemental Convention of Abolition of Slavery and the Slave Trade and Institution Practices similar to slavery of 1956 and similar United States injunctions against slavery. Article 1 reads, each member of the International Labor Organization, that's the ILO, which ratifies this convention, undertakes to suppress and not to make use of any form of force or compulsory labor. 1, as a means of political coercion of education, as punishment for holding or expressing political views or views ideologically opposed to the established political, social, economic, and political system. That is our political prisoners. B, as a method of mobilizing and using labor for purpose of economic development. That's our exploiting our labor. As a means of labor discipline. If you do not go to work in prison, you can be sanctioned and disciplined for not going to work. And D, a punishment for having participated in strikes. I know, because many times I've organized the strikes and got punished for it. And as well as E, as a means of racial, social, national, or religious discrimination. So we also have the international abolition of forced labor as another means of mechanism for which we know that this corporate government is in violation of laws. Thank you.
okay, that's great. I had the ILO on there and I couldn't remember if the US had signed that one, but it doesn't matter. We're going to cite everything that we can. So,
King, we have 20 minutes for Q&A,
okay,
and Brother Sekou is going to join us too,
okay.
before we move on to the next panel. And for folks who didn't see the chat, and that in the chat, the message that Ryan, one of our tech people, put in. Again, apologies for the idiot who came on and bombed our Zoom. So we're trying to work on that now, see if we can get chats put back in. But pigs are gonna do what pigs do. We just do what we do. We move forward.
All right, so you will see at your table a microphone, and if it's not on, you just push the center button, it'll turn green. And you don't have to get close to the mic, but just make sure it's pointed towards you. The red light will be on. And if you want to identify yourself, feel free. And what's your question or comment? Brief. No, we're over here.
Check,
Just raise your hand.
Good evening, assalamu alaikum. My name is Kab Abdul Fattah. My question is, where can the broadcast of this be seen? If we wanted to share it with other people, where can we see this? What happened today?
Ryan, you want to answer that?
Yeah, it'll be on Activist News Network on YouTube.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
live. It's live on Activist News Network right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Activist News Network. And so that'll be archived as well as being there live?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm going to be playing portions, shameless plug, on my radio show Monday morning, Good Morning Nueva York, on WBAI 99.5 FM and live streamed on WBAI.org. So you can hear segments there as well, but the whole thing will be there on that network.
And we are also recording live right here, by camera. So we're documenting this.
We got it covered. Okay, who had a question over here? You have to push the button. When the red light goes on, then you can hold it and you can talk. When
No,
the red light goes on, you'll know it's working. And if not, maybe you can move to another one. So while she's hooking up, anybody else have a question or comment? Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. I wanted to know where the New York legislation for the release aging people legislation in the State House. Where is it at now, and what is the holdback? Is it Stuart Cousins or the minority leader?
The elder parole bill is what you're referring to. Elder parole bill is a unique bill because it provides that if a person has reached 55 years of age and has served 15 years, they will be entitled to a parole release consideration, an interview to be considered for release. But the uniqueness about this bill that it doesn't matter how much time you got. If the judge sentenced you to 300 years, if you're 55 and you do 15, you're entitled to that interview. So it neutralizes life without parole or other death by incarceration sentences. And it has historically has majority support in the New York State Senate. That's 33 senators co-sponsor the bill in the Senate. While we don't have the co-sponsor majority in the Assembly, we have committed Assembly members that constitute the majority. What's holding these two bills back is the political or lack of political will by our leaders. They're afraid to put these bills on the floor. They know that both houses will vote for the bills, but they're afraid of the pushback the same way the PBA and everybody else wants to push back against bail. They're thinking that there's going to be an uprising by the PBA if these bills are passed, because the PBA right now, they initiated a bill that no cop killer in New York State, no matter how much time they got, should ever be released from prison.
Well, and just a follow-up on that. What'll it take to get them to stop shaking in their boots?
Community power. And we're in their district, we're in every district of the state, organizing community power, organizing labor, we're organizing teachers, nurses, students. We're organizing everybody to build massive critical community power to really kick them in the ass to pass these bills.
So-
Can I add to that, please?
Who's that?
That's Jalil.
Okay, go ahead. But did you turn that other computer on again? Because we're hearing the echo.
Yeah. Let me turn it off.
Okay. So I was doing that. What is it that you would like? You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me also answer that question as well. There is a bill. I don't have the numbers with me at this moment because the numbers being changed as a new session. But there's also a bill to end penal slavery. These bills are sponsored by Mari. Mari, what's Mari's last name?
Thelma Myrie.
Yeah, Zelma Myrie. Thank you, Hamza. Thelma Myrie, and also Harvey Epstein. Harvey Epstein in the Assembly, and Myrie is in the Assembly. And they have joint bills to end penal slavery in New York State. The bills in the last session passed the Senate. Everybody who was needed to pass the bills in the Senate passed the bill in the Senate, but the bills was not brought up in the Assembly. So they're being carried over to the next session, a new session of the Assembly, and which I think starts in September or November, and they'll probably be voted again in sometime in January or February. And so if anyone is interested about these bills, please contact me. You contact me and I'll put it in the chat if I get opportunity how to use the chat. Put it in the chat, my contact information for where I work for. I work for an organization called Citizen Action that is operating and sponsoring these two bills, supporting these two bills. We are confident that in the next session, of the New York State session, both Senate and the Assembly, that the bills will be passed and will be successful in ending penal slavery in New York State. But contact me and I'll put my contact information in for my work contact information in the chat if you can learn how to contact me and get more information. Okay? All right, thank you.
Great. And I did have that number. And I didn't transfer it to these notes here. It was either 3618 or 3816, but we will get that to you. Any other questions or comments? Be shy. We got a room full of people here. Nobody has any questions.
Just before you do that, just to be quick, since we do have a few minutes left. Anyone who can hear me, what you can do is you can send your questions to my text, and I will read them out. So we can avoid the whole chat situation. The number you would send it to is 929-270-9241. Again, 929-270-9241. Just text me your question, put your name there, and we'll try to get to your question. Go ahead, bro.
Hey, how you doing? This is brother Jamal. Hey, can you hear me?
We've got somebody with a question in the room. So if you could just sit tight for a second. All right, go ahead.
Now, real fast, I was gonna mention about the workers.
Get close.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, I was gonna mention about the workers. I was sentenced to 10 years when I was 17. And fortunately, I'm with the People Center as well as the Spirit of Mandela. And I have like my commissary receipts and different just like the pay stubs. And it shows that I made 10 cents every 2 weeks. And it just made me remember that. And I put these out. We had an art gallery, People Center, about 2 weeks ago. And I put that out so people can actually see what the hell is really be going out there. And if y'all do want to see, it just so happened that I still have it in my book bag. I could show y'all the commissary, how much money we had to pay for the food, for the phones, as well as how much money we was making. It didn't add up. And it never will add up. And it just made me think of that. And I just want to say that real fast.
Before you go, I want to follow up on that. So Can you take us through the numbers? So let's say you had a certain amount, let's say what we might call out here your net pay, and then can you talk about some of the deductions and then how it was that you had that amount left? He brought it with him.
Yeah, I do. I actually have them with me. So this is from Eastern Correctional Facility when I was up there in 2015. On February 5th, I made $2.37. And then on February 11th, I made another $2.37.
So that's weekly. That's a weekly.
Every 2 weeks.
Every
bi-weekly. Bi-weekly, I make $2.37.
Okay. Now
weekly.
The deductions.
And the deductions, I get I don't have any on this page right here.
Well, even from the top of your head, because you said you ended up with 5 or 10 cents.
Yeah, so a deduction would be if I actually have a little commissary receipt. So the first thing on this commissary receipt is fish steaks. Like a vegan, 52 cents for a pack of fish steaks, like a 12 ounce, maybe 6 ounces, 52 cents. They give us so that's about 5 cents, every paycheck I get. So that means I could probably get one. By the time I get paid, if I don't have outside help, my wife is over there, I could probably get one fish steak every 2 weeks. I'll go to commissary, working with this payroll. That's crazy.
My last. You should please. You should please use your mic. Just push the button there.
Yeah, you do actually, and I probably got stamps on here somewhere. Stamps, 47 cents a stamp. Yeah, for 47 cents.
Now, my last question for you is that you are going to the cafeteria, so why would you have the need to buy these fish products?
Yeah, the cafeteria doesn't give out meat. They don't provide meat to the men's facilities in New York State. It's all soy food to actually docile the men, to make us more feminine. Because soybeans is more of a estrogen product, which is inside the women. So they don't even give us meat. So I didn't eat the mess of food in there because of that reason right there. To make us docile, make us sissies, right? Shit. Y'all curse, right?
Besides how horrible it tastes.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I thought he was going to name that first. But
no, the shit is horrible. I could name meals, but it's just it's disgusting. Yeah, y'all don't want to eat that.
Can we go to a Jamu? Could you identify yourself, brother Jamu, who you are? Where you calling from? On the phone? Hello? Jamu, you called before?
This for someone on Zoom?
Yeah, it was, I just saw the phone and a little green circle, but he was talking a few seconds ago.
You remember what you-
They may have gotten booted.
All right, okay.
All right, any last questions or comments here? Okay. Please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Tarik. I'm a Black Panther. I did 17 years in federal prison as a prisoner, Black Liberation Army prisoner of war. And I was making like 10 cents an hour or something to that effect. And
What were you doing?
I was doing maintenance. When I was working in the kitchen and then I did maintenance in the hallway. But the 10 cents an hour thing was a bad thing for a person who wasn't getting much money from the outside, because oftentimes the prison kitchen didn't serve food that was edible. And so a person who wasn't making a great amount of money, I couldn't see a hustle guy on the side to compensate for that. So I was basically starving. You know, that's the real deal in the terms of the prison pay thing. That's what's going on. So we want to be mindful of that, and our discussion about a prisoner being a slave, you know, so that's what's going on. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And since you came to all the trouble to come up here, feel free to close us out with anything if you have any stories you'd like to tell about that or any other reflections.
I got 1,000 stories I could tell.
If you get a look.
But no, if I have a few minutes, I would start reiterating what I said at the beginning or in my initial talk, that we want people to get involved. We want people to become activists. We want people to help liberate themselves, help liberate your family. Put in the work. And we have a vehicle now that people can join. I think 3 of us have spoke about it already, the People's Senate. And although it might sound like it's a lot of people, we're talking about organizing millions of people. We're not talking about a couple of thousand people. So my last words would be, go to spiritofmandela.org and join with us. See what we're doing. It's the page will tell you a lot of what we're doing and what we need done. And I'm inviting everyone. I'm not gonna go as far as Jalil. I'm not gonna deputize you or what's the word they used to use when they used to make you go join the army?
No, impress or grab, impress and grab.
I'm not gonna draft no one.
Draft.
But I am again inviting folks to get involved in your liberation.
So I'll leave it to you, Jose Saldana. For those of you who are here in New York, you heard some important campaigns that are coming up. And how can people join that fight, the local fight, to get these bills pushed across the finish line?
I encourage everybody to go to our website. That's rappcampaign.com. You know, we're trying to dismantle the system. We're trying to end mass incarceration by freeing elder people who have already languished in prison for 3 and 4 decades. We have already increased the parole release rate from 25% to 47%, and we're not satisfied with that.
No.
We want more people out. In fact, in the last 3 years, you know, more people convicted of murder of police officers have been released. We're not talking about just political prisoners. We're talking about people who are social prisoners. And we talk about elders who have helped so many in prison for decades, and now they're out in our communities serving the people. So these men and women that we are trying to release from prison have value, and we definitely look at them as heroes and sheroes that must be returned back to their families and communities.
Can I just give one up to social political prisoner has just come out. Rochelle McGee, who was our longest held political prisoner. He did 67 years and he's finally in the street after 67 years. You know. For those of you who know of him, support him. He come home with nothing. Don't even hardly have family. We need to support him. In fact, we need to support all of our political prisoners of war when they come home, because they don't come home with any kind of old man's pension or anything. They come home with clothes on their back and $40. And that's how they have to start a new life. So whatever you can do to help, it'll be much appreciated. You can go to Rochelle McGee's page. I don't know his link, but if you really interested, look up Rochelle McGee and you can probably find a page where you can help support him. You know, then we have another political prisoner sitting in the room who did almost 50 years, Brother Sundiata Acoli, you know. But we have to remember that these brothers, sisters come home without anything. And they need your help. They need your help. To get out here, they need your help once they get out here.
Yeah, in a little sneak preview of the next panel, that Kamal Sadiki, one of our political prisoners still inside, is going to be the topic of the conversation. And his daughter Ksisay is over here. So I'm stealing a little thunder just to announce that for people who we're urging you to stick around to the second one. We want to close with this. You know, I like quotes. So whoever tells me this one, and it can't be any veterans of the movements, okay, or anybody else who's been here before. I want one of the new people to answer this one. Who said this? Each generation must, out of relative obscurity, determine its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. That's the challenge for those who are following behind the political prisoners of the last generation. So come up to me afterwards, say the name, and I'll find some gift for you. Okay, that way the veterans don't shout it out now. All right, so let's move to the Brother Shep, who's going to take us into the next direction. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hey, just a quick reminder for those in person, please speak into the mic.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna have a 3-minute transition before we call up the next panel. So folks can stand up, do a little stretching and so forth. I could make it 5. We are actually on time right now. So we'll be right back. The next panel will be dealing with elder abuse and medical neglect. No. Right next door. I don't know which side, but it's right next door. Oh, it's on this side. Yeah, you can't find your body. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. What color is it? Well, they lost some pocketbook somehow. Anybody see a black? Oh, okay.
You ready?
We ain't got it. I'm gonna get quality, man.
You know what?
I got this whole long thing here.
That's, I know that's payback because I had him on my show. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, we
I'm
do
happy
that while
with
we
that.
eating.
All right.
Your folks,
was
make
that?
sure you'll get something to eat before you leave.
And don't,
And we accept donations.
oh,
But that was, you're pretty hard tapping, right?
I am.
It hurt it, but.
Well, I got rotisserie
If I
chicken.
put it on some cloth, does it make a difference? It's the
Anybody
sound.
wants to take
It's
a
the
chicken
sound.
home,
It's the sound.
it costs $10.
Well, I don't,
I give you a discount. I could do that, even though I'm unemployed. Hey, whatever helps.
okay, and I don't think Claudia does all that stuff, and I forget how many people she's gonna have. Okay,
3 minutes, y'all.
So I don't.
I'll be looking. I imagine that bomber probably wasn't really his face. Like I said, we get his face put all over the world and kick his ass. Yeah.
They got so much stuff out there, but you know, I think if you go to full screen, who's host? Is it you or right? If you go to full screen on this image, it gives you, it might give you chat control at the whole screen, but the display screen would be just the presenter. I'm not sure though. I know there's a full screen mode that gives you, where's the host computer? Is it the touch screen? Oh.
She already tried to do something with hers to get rid of it or something. I don't know.
You did?
Yeah. She was out there for about all the time.
It's the,
Matter of fact, she's right behind you.
Is there a full screen option that gives you presentation mode for whoever's talking and gives the host a chat screen at the control?
Like, so the host, the chat screen doesn't show up there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, that probably isn't an option.
Okay.
So
Wrap it up now.
So it's just a duplicate of the, yeah. That's what it is.
I mean, you could pull it up on, another Zoom on my computer and then put it through the chat on there.
As the host.
As the host.
So this is the host.
Someone else.
forced labor bill.
But like, if you pull it up here, then you can keep the chat open there, but not. And you see the chat.
All right, y'all, let's go. We gotta get moving.
They're scared of the election. That's why they,
No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I think we're-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave him alone. Let him do what he doing.
It's the last one. All right, so you did it second. All right, so-
Yeah, I saw he said that he did something. It might be all right. Yeah. All right, y'all, we want to get started. I said I gave you some extra minutes. Y'all can get something to eat, as time goes on. Again, we're asking for a $5 donation if you have it. And you can take a whole chicken home if you want for $5. They cost 10. I know because I paid for them. Okay. I bought 7 of them. Okay, let's see.
How are we gonna talk and smell chicken at the same time?
And my stomach is growling, probably gonna come across the mic.
He sit right there too.
And green
All right,
is-
folks, let's go, let's go.
Oh, man.
Yo got the, Hey, give me a go, Jeff, when you're ready.
Do we have to push this through? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Donation.
Okay. Okay, peace and welcome back. This is Prison Lives Matter, Release Our Elders, day number 2. We're here live at NYU Law School in Vanderbilt Hall, and we are about to proceed with our second panel for the evening. The title of this panel is Elder Abuse and Medical Neglect. Again, this is Brother Shep. I am co-hosting here this evening with Sister Miriam, who's one of the law students here, working behind the scenes. And we're gonna ask our folks that are getting some food to eat to try to lower their voices a little bit because we're getting ready to start. That's right, for those of y'all that didn't come out here live, y'all missing all the goods that's here. We got some great food here and y'all not getting any. Okay, so we're gonna move ahead. First, I want to find out if our virtual folks are here. We're looking for one of our Panther Cubs, Russell Maroon Shoatz III. Russ, are you here?
He is not in the Zoom.
Okay. Next, I'm going to call on Dr. James McIntosh.
Not in the Zoom.
All right. Dr. Ricardo Alvarez.
Not in the Zoom.
And last but not least, Dr. Barbara Zeller.
Yes.
All right. So we have Dr. Barbara Zeller, who incidentally is working with our campaign to free Kamal Sadiki, which we hear a little bit about. So right now I'm going to turn the mic over to our moderator here, Sister Claudia Williams, one of my comrades, veteran member of the Black Panther Party. And it was good to have a Sister Panther up here. Okay, Claudia will tell you a little bit about herself. She's going to be again moderating this panel. Particularly of our interest is we're really looking at families, the effect that medical neglect and elder abuse has on our families. Definitely our political prisoners, as was mentioned earlier. Brother Sekou mentioned Bashir Hamid, and Albert Washington, Noah Washington. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about them right now. That's not easy. Folks that we lost inside. But then we have folks who came home and died days later because of the medical neglect and the quacks that are in these hospitals. So we're going to get into that. And so I'm going to turn over right now to my friend and comrade, Sister Claudia.
What's the call?
Free them all.
Free them all. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. I want to talk just a little bit about some of our brothers, political prisoners, when we talk about medical neglect. Now, we all know why they were targeted, because they're political prisoners, and the United States of amnesia, it's like they keep saying that they are no political prisoners. that there's no such thing, but we know better than that. So I want to talk about Mumia, who had to go under heart surgery. Ed Poindexter has had his leg amputated. And of course, our beloved Abdul Majid, who died behind the walls because of kidney failure. Gallbladder. So in this time and age, gallbladder should not have been his demise. That's something that is very simple. But he was a Panther. He was with Blah. He was an activist. He was a freedom fighter, which is not a cop killer, where the government wanted everybody to think that they were terrorists. I mean, come on, do I look like a terrorist? But we're talking about freedom fighters that have been behind the walls for years and years and years and years. Some of them have been behind the walls older than your parents. I mean, longer than your parents are old. Y'all know what I'm saying. Help me out here. So we're talking about how can we stop the medical abuse? You know, how can we get them out? How can we stop them from being targeted? I mean, if you can stay in solitary confinement 20, 30 years, what is that? That's medical abuse. We're talking about things that you could not imagine. First of all, when they first go to jail, they're tortured. And then the whole time they're in jail, they're targeted. So right now I'm going to turn the mic over to Ksisay, whose father, Kamal Sadiki, is an elder that we're trying to get home.
Peace, everyone. Again, my name is Ksisay Sadiki, and yes, my father's Kamal Sadiki, and we're not just going to try to get him home. He is coming home.
That's right.
All right, all right.
He's coming home. I want to talk about my father and what he's experienced in prison. It saddens me when every time I get an emergency call where he's like he has 2 wounds on his right and left leg, and those wounds are constantly getting infected. When he went into prison, he didn't have those wounds. My father had hepatitis and something called sarcoidosis, and my father's always been very just pro his health. He's a vegan. He needs certain kinds of meals. But again, when he went back into prison, he didn't have those wounds. He exercised daily, and now he has these horrible wounds that have gotten infected. He's in a medical prison and being neglected. It's Augusta State Medical Facility. He's had numerous infections, where there've been times that he's called me and he's like, I need everybody to do a call to action because I don't know if I'm gonna make it. There's been times that they've taken him to other hospitals where I've almost lost him. So I think not only as his daughter, who I'm so close to my father, you know, I mean, I'm really, I love my father so much, but to have to take action when you're devastated, you know, it has made me very strong, you know, and the only way that I'm able to communicate with my father is through JPay. And I was just thinking, I'm being so educated with this conversation that we're having and just talking about the working situation and like private industries, because he's not able to call me. So I really depend on JPay to communicate with him. And again, if there's an emergency, then he has to check with the warden and call me. So to get these messages through JPay that he's in need of my help it's horrible. But I'm always there, and y'all know that. Whenever there's something going on with my father, the first person he calls, I'm gonna make sure that he gets what he needs. There was a recent situation too where he wasn't getting his what is it, for his blood pressure medications. You know, it's simple things. And one of the big issues too is just that there's lack of staff too at these prisons. You know, like it'll be a weekend where he gets an infection. He has to have his wounds changed, you know, and there's no one there. And he's just waiting and waiting and waiting. So again, it's horrible. That's just like a little bit of what I experienced with my father, you know. And again, like him and so many other of our freedom fighters are suffering. And like, I don't want to get a call that it's too late, you know, and I don't want to give him a message that our freedom fighters, his comrades, have died, you know. So but yeah, I'm really I'm learning and growing and evolving as I fight for my father's freedom, and as I'm a part of this campaign, and even just this building the People's Senate, because we all need to definitely be a collective and free out all of our political prisoners.
Thank you so much, Ksisay. Dr. Barbara Zeller, is she with us? Would you like to?
Sure.
Now?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Dr. Barbara Zeller. I've been part of the movement since the 70s, the anti-imperialist movement, and I'm a doctor. And as such, I really have become a medical advocate for so many political prisoners over the years. I just want to say, I know this crowd is celebrating the life of Mutulu Shakur. I had the great privilege of working with him in the late 70s and early 80s at the Lincoln Hospital acupuncture program and the Black Acupuncture Association of North America. And I was part of could be the medical advisor for his legal team, which was very important to get him parole. And of course, I'm grieving his passing with everyone else. But what's the role that is so important? And we need more people, more medical people to do this. It's sort of, we have a role to try to keep people alive, you know, be part of the keeping them alive, you know, while their campaigns and their legal teams and the movement is working to get them out, to get them home, and to, do all the work that we need to do to end this terrible situation and mass incarceration. And that for me has meant over the years that I both visit people have so many questions, like they're being told stuff about their health, that they have no idea whether it's true or not. And a lot of times it's not true. So to have someone to say, this is what I've been told. I get medical records for people and I can interpret the medical records. I can listen to them if they make a phone call, or listen to the families if they're calling for a question. And of course, it's been very important to review medical records for the legal teams as the legal cases go on. So it's one role that I've been privileged to have, but I've also grown old with our political prisoners and have witnessed the medical neglect over the years. And just to mention that the models of care in prison are either that the prison provides the medical care through hiring the staff, and of course that staff reports to the prison. Who can trust that? And then the newest thing is that there are new corporations that the prison, gets as vendors, and they're for-profit corporations. So their job is to reduce cost. You can imagine that the cost on each prisoner for medical care is dismal anyway. But now they have these organizations that come in, they run and hire the entire medical care, and that's happened recently for Kamal in his prison. I'm actually part of his support committee as well. And it's very, very concerning and very worrisome. So what we've learned over the years is that, particularly for the political prisoners, I think everybody, who's taken care of their parents, who understands about medical care, I'm speaking primarily about elders right now, is that medical care is incredibly complicated. In order to do it well, you need to have lab tests, you need to have CAT scans, you need to have MRIs, you need to have specialists. You need people, not just, the primary care physician's assistant who might be able to treat your cold. You need people that are going to think about complicated diagnoses. And for the political prisoners, security concerns trump everything. So the prison, if they go out for an MRI, if they go out for a specialist, if they go out for a CAT scan, they need to send guards. They need to send, they see it as a security issue, and they don't do it. It's like it's delayed and delayed and delayed. So it brings me to the really serious question about what's happened with cancer diagnosis with the political prisoners. And every single one of them has had a delayed and botched diagnosis. I just want to, we mentioned some of them, but Mutulu was at least, in terms of my reviewing the records, at least 2.5 to 3 years before they diagnosed something that should have been diagnosed. Russell Maroon Shoatz was also misdiagnosed and delayed in treatment. Veronza Bowers has cancer. Marilyn Buck, Mutulu died 6 months after he got out. Russell Maroon Shoatz died about 2 months after he got out. Marilyn Buck died 3 weeks after she got out. Bashir Hamid died in prison. Alan Berkman was diagnosed in prison and was able to get out after a massive medical campaign to get him care. Sylvia Beraldini had cancer. Albert New Washington died in prison. And Andres Figueroa Cordero died shortly after he was released. So these are all medical neglect. And these, in most cases, people did not have to die from these tumors. So once they're diagnosed, the medical neglect and delays keeps. And can you imagine, if anybody's gone through cancer treatment with their loved ones, what it means to go through chemotherapy when you're in prison, when you're in pain, when you're nausea and vomiting? I mean, this is elder abuse. It's not, it's medical neglect and it's elder abuse. And I hope if Dr. Alvarez gets on, he can discuss the whole issue of the political campaigns trying to, talk about elder abuse as a real factor. I mean, in every state in this country, you're supposed to report elder abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, financial, any kind of abuse is reported to the state. Yeah, I don't think we get to report people in prison that are run by the states. No. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with. Again, I feel like people do have to understand, because of who our freedom fighters are, that the security issues mean that they don't get out for most of the things that they need. And I know that these are common issues for all prisoners. I'm not trying to, make conditions solely for the freedom fighters, but there is a particularity about how they're viewed. The campaigns about keeping people safe, it really does rely on the committees, the relatives like Ksisay. There are people getting us information so we can yell and scream and have the lawyers contact the prisons when there's a real issue of life-threatening issue going on. And this has worked, and it's worked in the past. The campaigns work. The lawyers in particular work. It's a threat to have a lawyer call the prison and say, I hear this is going on. And so we need the information, we need the interpretation, and making an appeal. We need more medical people to play this role. And we will bring them home. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zeller.
So, Sister Cole, I'll make one last call, see if anybody else has joined us, and if not, we can go into the Q&A. So, final call for Dr. James McIntosh. Dr. James McIntosh.
Still not here.
Okay. Dr. Alvarez.
Not here.
All right. And Russell Maroon Shoatz, the third.
Not here.
Okay, we did reach out to them. Hopefully everything is all right. There's a lot of stuff been going on today people don't know about to get this going, but we're still moving forward. So, the floor is open. Questions about medical neglect, elder abuse. We have folks that deal with that on a regular basis, and we have people here that can address that question. So, questions? To Claudia, she'll take care of that. And again, we have a little problem with our chat system. Ryan, we still can't do that, right?
People can message in the chat.
Oh, we can do it now?
Yeah, if people people can raise their hand, or they can message in the chat if they want to say something.
Okay, folks, do y'all have any questions?
Yes, everyone. Thank you. I was wondering, is there any system? Has anybody ever reported elder abuse in prison? I mean, is there a system? Have they ever done anything about that?
I believe, especially in the case of our political prisoners, they wanted to lock them up and throw away the key and not hear anything from them. That's why they would place them in prisons that was very, very far away so that their family couldn't get to them, you know, as regularly as it should. So by the time they got to them, to see that there was some kind of abuse or neglect, it was already there. You know, it's really shameful and frustrating for the families, because there's no in between. There's nobody there to reach out to say, your son, your husband, your brother is in dire need, you know, and police and corrections don't care. You know, we're going through what is it called? Compassionate release. You know, these brothers are suffering and dying needlessly. And they still don't want to give them a compassionate releases so they could spend the rest of their days with their loved ones. So it's up to us. You know, it's up to us. All power to the people is not just a word. We can do it.
I just want to comment we had talked about this idea of the beginning to file elder abuse reports in the Sadiki campaign, at one point. I think actually it's a good idea for us to think about again, because it's not an issue. The thing is, it's not an issue just for one person. It's like if we started advocating that family members, that lawyers begin every time they hear of even a minor abuse, that they file a report, that even though these reports, they have a separate commission in each state, and the prisons, I'm sure, they have no jurisdiction over, it still, I think, makes for an incredibly important public campaign about, there's 1,000 letters coming in from where, let's say, where Kamau is imprisoned about medical neglect and abuse. And so no one's doing anything about it. So I do think that they're good ideas for mass campaigns. And, we should pursue the idea in some way. Thank you for the question.
We agree.
I just want to say too, I agree with everything everyone's saying. Just like, again, there have been times that my father has been in the hospital or has been really.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
The dog in the background, is there anything we can do about that? Can't do it. Okay, go ahead. This is it.
Oh, just where I haven't heard from my father, it'll be an emergency and it's like days and days that I don't hear from him. And that's, and I'm calling the prison and they're putting me on hold and, and I'm just worried about what's going on, just to get an answer. So there's that lack of communication. And then again, with the neglect and abuse, there's so much time that passes where somebody outside would get immediate care. They're deliberately not getting the care. So.
I saw a hand up earlier, Jay.
Yes, I will unmute them.
Okay, indeed.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right. I want to say thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak. I definitely appreciate the platform and everything that's going on. And I just wanted to make a short comment. I heard someone say, how can we support those that need help? I found that phone zaps and call to actions are very helpful. I've just having a system of where you have people that are ready to make those calls and do those emails could be especially helpful to not only call the facility itself, but to call those that are over top of them. And a lot of the times, results come from that are beneficial. So, staying in the fight, banding together, making sure that we, document everything that's going, be it in writing or videos or audio, just, everything that's going on. So we can keep a account of everything is very helpful. And when it comes to appealing to the people, I found that a lot of times you have to appeal to their heart. And if that doesn't work, you have to appeal to their sensibilities. Sometimes people get stuck in this rut where they think that people that, are in prison, they're throwaways. So you have to remind them that they're people, remind them of their own situations to where there's no different than it could have easily been them if they would have got caught what they were doing. But sometimes you have to appeal to the rules, just the things that are going on. This is going on in this facility, it's usually a money trail. Like they're given a certain amount of money for maintenance and medical and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So when that type of stuff is neglected, that means that someone is stealing. So sometimes the people that we, are trying to get in on the fight need to be appealed to, their pockets. So just trying to, not necessarily recruit those that are, aren't trying to hear what we have to say, but making sure that we motivate those that are in the fight and those that are on the line. We give them something that they can, stand fast to. And I yield.
Thank you.
Sister in the back, and then right here.
Okay, hello, can you hear me? Thank you very much for this thus far. My question is in regard to the legal standing of torture, and wanted to know if there's any legislation to consider medical abuse or neglect as torture. And then for lawyers in the room, from a legal standpoint, has the framework of torture actually been helpful in getting wins for our people who are inside?
King, can you answer that question for the sister?
The mic was still working. What's that? Go ahead. Oh.
On face.
Oh. Of course, it's not working. You had it. There you go.
All right. So in order to get torture recognized, the law would have to honor that concept. And we have had some success around solitary confinement as torture. And the process was to go internationally, because these courts haven't recognized it unless it was use of excessive restraints or excessive force. So if you want to tell me what kind of torture you're referring to, you mean like medical neglect? So far, that word has not been used because that has an international significance, but there have been cases where people have been in significant pain as consequences of not getting surgery, and that's an element that's brought up in the case. But referring to it as torture, now I spend a good bit of time trying to get litigators who handle these cases to cite international law in their filings, because it's the law of the land. And for me, a good attorney would be required to use every legal tool in the toolbox in order to fight. And some lawyers who I know are fearless are saying to me, well, the judge won't like it. And I'm really surprised to hear them say that the judge won't like it. But I respect their judgment because they're before those courts, and it may be that they may lose in some other way as revenge. But we have to keep pressing the idea of using the international conventions and saying it is torture. And we just gave some earlier citations around the 13th Amendment as cruel and unusual, even though it doesn't amount to that. Is that close enough? Okay. We might want to recruit you for this.
Yes, I'm thinking that legally also medical murder is applicable to the prison administration because they have no mechanism to carry out the periodic examination. And as everyone knows, it has been established that in order to address many diseases, you want to do the periodic checkup of the person to discover these ailments early, and then you can cure these ailments. But there's no mechanism in the regular prison system to deal with the periodic examination and to discover these things early. And I think that when we see prisoners dying, what happens is the medical people don't discover the disorder until it's 5 years or 6 years in the making, because they wasn't examining all the prisoners on a periodic basis. So this lack of a mechanism for examining prisoners on a periodic basis should be the basis for the administration being considered as medical murderers.
We have a question from Paulette. Should I unmute?
Hold on, Ryan, we have somebody here.
Oh, my apologies.
In New York, RAP, Release Agent People in Prison, has collaborated with several organizations, including Center for Constitutional Rights, which has attorneys involved in that. And we issued a report to the Special Rapporteur, asking the Special Rapporteur is a UN entity on racial torture. We asked the Special Rapporteur to issue a proclamation that death by incarceration sentences constitutes torture because it is inconsistent with a clause in the UN Charter that says that people should not be held in conditions where they are helpless. And that clause, applies to people who are serving death by incarceration sentence. And one of the evidence that we submitted with it was that in New York State, the average age of death for people 50 and over is 58 years old. I don't know about other states, 58 years old. So that's the impact of torture. So we're actually waiting for the Special Rapporteur to issue this. In fact, I believe it's going to be issued very soon. And then the United States has 30 days to respond. And then the Special Rapporteur will make that proclamation public internationally.
Okay, Ryan. All right.
Thank you, Brother Shep. Thank you, everybody. It's very interesting, the whole question of medical neglect. And one of the causes that we have identified is the lockdowns. Now, I'm also with Jericho, but also with the Leonard Peltier Official Committee. And we have issued a call for folks to call the Bureau of Prison and to send an email regarding the lockdowns. Over the last 3 months, federal prisons have been locked down 90% of the time, which means during that time, there is no medical checkup. There is no care for diabetes or to get finger sticks. And if you fall or are hurt and there's no medical care, they just ignore it. So if you go on freeleonardpeltiernow.org, there is some information that we have put out with some phone numbers and a script for people to call the Bureau of Prisons and demand that they end these lockdowns. There is no more COVID. They are using this as punitive. Their guards are on vacation, so rather than have somebody double up, they just lock them down. Means families don't get to visit, or if they go and find out that it's locked down, then they've wasted all that money on going to visit. And like someone said earlier, they will put you at the opposite end of the country from where your family is. Leonard's people are from North Dakota, and he is being held in Florida. Veronza's daughter is in California, and he is in North Carolina. So you can see their whole thing is to make it financially difficult for families to visit. So if you check out freeleonardpeltiernow.org, there will be information and the number for folks to call to help end these lockdowns in the federal system. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Any other questions? We have about 10 more minutes for questions.
Oh, I just want to say, when you're talking about visitation too, that like even for my father, before COVID, I could spend the full Saturday or Sunday from like 9 to 3. Now it's only 2 hours. So I also, just speaking of the distance, I have to fly to Atlanta or to Augusta where he is to see him. And then, which I recently had a visit with him for Father's Day weekend and Juneteenth. And I spent 2 hours with him.
those are the best 2 hours, but just thinking about that.
How was his spirit?
Oh, my father's spirit's always just high. I mean, and then, I mean, he's my father, so just for us to see each other. I hadn't seen him since 2019. So yeah, it was a great visit. And of course, you know, like he didn't want to spend the whole conversation talking about his wounds and everything that he's been through. He wanted us to talk as father and daughter, but I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to know, and both his feet are like bandaged up. And so he does experience a lot of pain that he doesn't want to talk about, but he does, so.
And Ksisay, just one question. I know we talk about the distances. I know there were times when you traveled and your mom traveled all the way down there and you weren't able to see him.
Yeah, there was a time that my kids were much younger. And we drove to Augusta. My mother, my daughter and son and myself. And when we got to the prison, we had all the paperwork we submitted and they denied them. So I was the only one that got to go see him. And my children, I mean, they were like devastated. They hadn't seen him. And actually I have this picture that I can't share right now of my son who looks so much like his grandfather. Just his like being in shock. And then there's just the prison behind him and it's a black and white photo. And that right there shows how it affects the kids, how it affects families. And my children haven't seen him since they were, they didn't get a chance to see him. So we need a trip, you know. And my daughter's 29 and my son is 25. So it's been a long time.
We have about 5 more minutes for questions or comments.
There was one question in the chat from Marta who wrote, who is permitted to enter the prison to see what a prisoner's situation is?
Sounds like a combination legal and family question. Go with the legal first, okay?
So the prisons, each system has its own rules for requirements. Generally, non-legal people are required to be on a list. There's certain documentation that has to be supplied. There are a lot of people in this room who can respond to parts of this. And then as far as the legal visits, the way it's supposed to work is that anytime during normal hours, even without an appointment, that's supposed to be allowed. There's some states where the presentation of legal credentials is enough as long as the visitor is okay with it. There are other places where I've had to submit things ahead of time and I'm supposed to be able to visit. I don't know if you remember during Ferguson, there was a brother who got caught up in some weapons charges because an undercover came up and tried to draw him into the purchase of an individual handgun. And it had nothing to do with the movement. It had nothing to do with anything, just this individual had persuaded him, but because he was politically active, he caught a case behind it. And even though I had made the appointment, I had shown up, when I presented my credentials, I went with his wife and they would only allow one of us to go. So naturally, of course, I stepped back, but there was no reason at all why that had to happen because I should have been able to visit even if we hadn't gotten there at the start of visiting hours and it was close to closing time. So that's the legal side of it. And of course, politicians can be persuaded too if it's in their jurisdiction. And Jose may know whether there have been times when you've been able to persuade city council people or assembly people or senate people to go in to review conditions. Have there been any recent examples of that?
In New York, the chair of like the crimes committee or the major committees has carte blanche. They can go in unannounced anytime, anytime. They usually don't do that you know, they give them the courtesy of saying, I'm gonna visit so-and-so. But when they go into the facility, they could say, I want to visit this particular person, that one, one at a time, privately. I don't want anybody there. I mean, they have that kind of power. They don't use it too often because, you know, they just don't have the backbone. But in New York State prisons, you don't really need a visiting list. You can actually just visit anybody as long as you're 18 or over and you have the proper identification, you can visit somebody. The only restriction is that sometimes in some prisons, the alphabet last name alternates. One day Ada L is on a Saturday, the next weekend Ada L is on Sunday. So you got to call, make sure that you go on the right day of the last name, otherwise you won't get it.
Yes.
Thank you. I have another question. So I know just from some of the work that was happening around the $11 billion that de Blasio gave to prisons before he left, that's his legacy, his words. There's been an internal push amongst the apparatus of incarceration of neoliberalizing prison, right? So now you have prison for pregnant people, prison with yoga, prison with all these bells and whistles, which I believe is part of the push, at least in terms of New York City, to replace actual affordable housing with just incarcerating everybody as their housing. But that's another story. I just wanted to know on that note if this neoliberalization of incarceration has had any effects on medical neglect in prison that folks have seen, aside from there like being yoga classes in prison or whatever, because that's gonna help. That's all.
You said it yourself, bells and whistles. That's all it amounted to.
We have time for one more.
There's a question in the chat. Should I ask it?
Yes, you can.
Okay, this is from Nube. She asked, should we extend medical neglect and or cruel and unusual punishment to the abuse inflicted on our loved ones? And now the quote medications and drugs they're forced to take, which fuels the pharmaceutical profits.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And that. Okay. So that concludes this panel. Thank you, Nube. And you reminded me to make this announcement tomorrow. I'm going to do it before we close. Tomorrow we have Oakland and we have Chicago. They will be online. We'll make sure that you get their Zoom information. And unfortunately, we can't do what we want to do, I don't think. Ryan, is it possible we can flash that on the screen or something somewhere online before we close out? The links to their two panel discussions that they're having. But just schedule-wise, there's going to be a program from Atlanta for Dr. Mutulu Shakur, a celebration of life, starting at 11 a.m. And almost immediately following that, Chicago will be doing their presentation live, just like we're doing right here in NYU. We'll have a live audience and it will be also streamed. And then when Chicago is done, Oakland will take up the reins. And they will have speakers and presentations to contribute to this. So again, this is all been organized primarily answering the call from Prison Lives Matter. We all came together to answer that call, to put together these 3 days. So again, we can move forward. And when I speak of moving forward, we're going to take a 3-minute transition and bring up our closing speaker, who will be talking about which way forward. And immediately after that speaker does that, we have Brother Kwame Shakur will be coming on to close us out this session. He's currently doing a count right now. Count ends at 7:30 our time from that prison in Indiana. And then he'll be calling in to close us out for the evening. So 3-minute transition, then I'm gonna call up Brother Tarik Haskins, another veteran of the Black Panther Party and a former Black Liberation Army political prisoner. So 3 minutes, y'all. Thank you all.
I hope they can hear my stomach growling through the mic.
Don't stop. Is that why you running back here? So you know the food is over there? Ksisay beat you. She's trying to get over to the food. You got your Panther blue dress on. Just so you know, mysteriously the air conditioning stopped it here. And they couldn't find anybody to do anything about it. Mysteriously. Just like they canceled Tag's flight, so he couldn't get here from Alabama. And they cut out my communications last night and this morning. I wasn't, you know, I usually send out reminders on the emails. Couldn't do it. And Facebook, they stopped me from that too. They've been watching me, but it's like, you know, I always gotta remember. That's why I tell folks, when you get the email, save the date, keep it. Don't depend on me to remind you.
Hey, Shep, do you want us to play some music?
Huh? Yeah.
Shep wants to play some music.
Music? 2 minutes. we got to make, because Kwame should be coming on in a second, so I want to get Tarik up. So we can play the music at the end when the rest of us are eating.
All right.
It's take as much as you can. I don't want to take nothing off. There's kale there, there's kale, there's salad, there's roast chicken.
That was me. All right, Tarik, whenever you're ready. You had a whole month to get prepared. It's already. Nah. You don't need no notes anyway, man. Just get up here and talk. One thing that the no-shows helped us out with the time. So we were on schedule. We were ready. They wasn't ready. Just put that, I'll give her something, but she. And if you want to, you can buy one of those chickens for $5. They're $10 chickens. I'm giving it to you for half price. There ain't no way to work it. You know them chickens when I get up. I hear you. I'm gonna push it before we leave. All right, y'all can resume your conversation afterwards. We're ready to start.
Brother Shep, any chance you could forward me the flyer related to Matulu Shakur for tomorrow?
It's in your email. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I've been searching for it. I can't seem to find it.
It's a flyer and it's got a picture of him and the best thing I can say is this, like I told folks, if they even send their, reach out to me and I'll email it, or hopefully I'll be back up when I get home tonight so I can send stuff back out. Let's see if it's in my phone. I don't think so, but I'll check. And then we'll start. Kwame should be here now. I don't want to get cut off. Okay. Welcome back, folks. We're moving towards the wind up of this panel and discussion. This has been great information. And our next speaker who'll be talking about which way forward. And he has a lot of experience in knowing which way forward, having been captured for nearly 2 decades, being a freedom fighter in this country. So bring up Brother James Tarik Haskins, again, a veteran of the Black Panther Party and a former prisoner of war from the Black Liberation Army. Brother Tarik, you have the floor.
Okay, peace, family. As it was pointed out, my name is Tarik. I am a Black Panther. Those of us who you see here, we are of the mindset that once we became Panthers, we did not stop because the FBI, our enemies, defeated the Black Panther Party. So I'm still a Panther. And as it was pointed out, I'm a former member of the Black Liberation Army. I spent 17 years in various American death camp prisons. Now, we are here today discussing that prison lives matter, and our objective is to liberate our prisoners. And let me say this to begin. Thank you for your efforts to save the lives of our prisoners. That's how bad our situation is. So thank you for your efforts to save the lives of our prisoners of war. And I want to begin by saying I want to thank the panelists, which consisted of Brother Sekou Odinga, which is a longtime prisoner of war. Jose Saldana is a longtime political prisoner, and he and I did time together. And I want to thank Ksisay for coming here to familiarize us with her father's situation. And as she pointed out, her father's situation is a dire situation, and it deserves our special attention. I want to thank Barbara Zeller. She said she's a doctor, a longtime doctor with the struggle, and I knew her husband. And I want to thank Jalil Muntaqim. He's a longtime political prisoner. He's a Black Panther. He spent 49 years in prison as a prisoner of war. Now, this thing of freeing our prisoners is a component of a larger struggle, and that struggle is to free Black people. So that's a larger struggle, but the component struggle that we're addressing is very much like the larger struggle. We are in a situation where our relatives, our friends, family members are being killed. And so that gives us a sense of urgency that we must address it. We must get organized. We must let people know that killing is going on. And so we have to come together to deal with this, to stop the killing, you know. And so we come to this matter with that in mind, you know. But we want to know that even though our situation is urgent, we have to take the time to take a look at the whole picture of what we're dealing with if we are going to be free. And so I'm just gonna, thank you. I'm gonna read a little something I have prepared here. I love you, and certainly prisoners of war love you because you are intelligent. You went through this program to learn about what was discussed so you can make informed decisions. Also, I love you, and prisoners of war love you because you are courageous. You are here in spite of knowing the enemy, the FBI, the CIA, are upset with us inferior persons for being here. Because you have gone through the program, you now know the definition of a prisoner of war. He or she is a person incarcerated for actions carried out in support of legitimate struggles for self-determination or for opposing illegal policies of the government. And we know what those illegal policies are of the government. And to be clear, the policy is the government is killing us. That's what we are opposed to. So let us be clear, the government is killing us. And that is what the principal thing that our prisoners of war were fighting against. It was further said that a prisoner of war is those combatants struggling against colonial and alien domination and racist regimes. More specifically, a prisoner of war was struggling against a capitalist gangster government. And that's why we urge our people to study our situation. And once we study it ourselves and not have teachers tell us what the situation is, and teachers, many of them are doing the honest thing. They're telling their students honestly what the situation is. And that's why teachers are being fired in droves, and they are under intense attack because of their truthfulness about our situation. But as Noah pointed out to me, that man is best who seeks truth himself. Prisoners of war are persons who are struggling to stop the gangster capitalist ruling class from exploiting, super robbing Black people, stop poor people from being wage slaves. Many of us who work, we are still on food stamps. So we really not really making any money out of this situation. We are slaves, and we are being given money to allow us to take care and defray these different costs, and rather than the slave master doing it. That's all that is, but we are wage slaves. Prisoners of war were struggling to stop the ruling class agents from training the American people. Stop the American people. Let me go over this. Prisoners of war were struggling to stop the ruling class agents from training the American people to kill Black people like the Nazis trained the German people to kill the Jews. I have a picture over here. I didn't bring it with me, but I have a picture of a rat and a Black person. And in a newspaper, this was in a media item, it's in a newspaper, but that is a technique that was employed by the Nazis to train the German people to eliminate the Jews. First, they would show Jews eating out the garbage, then they would show rats eating out the garbage. And everybody knows that a rat is a disgusting animal, and people normally feel that a rat should be killed, so that they make that association with people. And the government is doing that with Black people. They are training people, our people out there, they say, I love America. However you feel about America, America is trying to kill you. You know, they trying to kill every Black man, woman, and child. And people who say that they love America, obviously they don't know psychology, they don't know about these other techniques that the government is using to kill us, you know. And I could go into, they cut these highways through our areas, and that kills a lot of children who have asthma. People don't even know that. And they don't even do the math. If you do the math, you would come out to the government of the United States is deliberately killing between 800 and 1,100 Black people every day. And for the police to shoot somebody, that's almost like a distraction or something, because they have a mechanism for killing us, and that is what is going on. So now, also, prisoners of war were fighting to eliminate from the Western nuclear family the practice of parents telling their children, I am the father, the mother, and you are the children. I give the orders and you obey them. Doing that is equivalent to saying, I am the superior person and you are the inferior people. Doing that practice acquaint children to living in rather than rebelling against this stratified hierarchical capitalist society. And that's an important thing. We are in an oppressed situation, a genocidal situation, but we are digging a hole deeper by carrying out the practices that the authorities have trained our people to embrace. And we have been told that the way we raise our children is the correct way. It's the correct way for raising slaves, but if you are in a concentration camp and the line is going to the gas chamber, you don't want to be with someone who is in the habit of obeying authority. And so we are training our children to be obeyers and to have a lot of respect for persons who are killing us. And not only respect, they love them and want to imitate them, want to dress like them and everything. So we have to, the way forward then is to, this is the big leg of the capitalist system. One of the legs is how we conduct ourselves, the practices employed in the Western nuclear family. We have to eliminate that. We will knock out one of their legs. Additionally, prisoners of war were struggling to supplant the Western banking approach teaching methodology and replace it with the knowledge acquisition approach to learning. Knowledge acquisition is a system, the cornerstone of which is to inspire the student to want to learn, to want to acquire knowledge. The Western school system is about training. That's why they keep coming out with the students are not learning this, that, and the other. And they're going to put emphasis on the STEM subject because the students are not learning the STEM subject. Well, what are they learning? They're learning to obey. And we have to knock that system out. And they're using the banking approach. They tell you, come in, and the teacher will stuff the information in your head. And so that discourages you actually from learning, because you're going to sit there and after a while, you're going to say, well, they tell you, don't look this way, don't move that way. So after a while, you just sit there and take whatever they give you, and you don't be inquisitive, and you don't be trying to learn anything on your own. Now, the knowledge acquisition approach is you want to discuss with students the different disciplines, mechanical engineering, electronic engineering, this, that, and the other, and see which one the student would like. And then you will supply the students with the books, first train them ABCs, basic arithmetic, and then supply them with this information. And then they will be wanting to, I want to go here and learn this here, I want to go here and learn that there. That's what we need. We need self-actuated students, students who will assess a situation and decide on an objective, formulate a plan, carry out the plan, and then assess what he or she has done. We need those kind of persons at an early age, at 6 or 7 years old, not after the graduate school level. We can reach that point at a student that's 6 or 7 years old. Knowing what prisoners of war were struggling to realize, and knowing that when criminal offenders came to know these objectives, they would morph into being political prisoners with the same aspirations as persons who come from the street. The agents of the rich ruling class subject our prisoners of war to a cruel regimen designed to kill and persuade them to abandon their course of resistance. As you know, government agents subject our prisoners of war to a judicial process that result in them receiving differential sentences outside of the normal range. And that's a normal thing for the government to do that to our political prisoners, and they do that to many prisoners. And I'll just point this out. That's why they don't like jailhouse lawyers, because a jailhouse lawyer will say that they didn't apply this, that, and the other rule to your case. And once we point that out, you will be free. That measure is followed by illegally and repeatedly denying parole to our prisoners of war. And because the Constitution says prisoners are slaves, saying that communicates to members of the prison administration that prisoners are beyond the pale of persons who should be given constitutional protections. Accordingly, prisoners of war are repeatedly set up to be brutalized by prison guards and by other prisoners. Prisoners of war and all prisoners are subject to hot and cold torture excesses. Political prisoners and all prisoners are subject to medical murder. Our prisoners of war must be free. They must be removed out of harm's way. They must be taken out of the grips of a criminal gangster government, a government that overthrows other governments to force the overthrown people to be customers of America. Political prisoners must be free to continue their initial pursuit of freeing Black people, of freeing humanity from a government intent on killing every Black man, woman, and child, and on killing every revolutionary. I want to end by saying, welcome back to our brother Sekou. He spent 67 years in captivity, and he did us proud, and we love you for that, for standing up under the weight of the government for all those years. So peace. We have to free our political prisoners. We have to end this war that's being waged against us, and we can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, we're gonna put a call out and see if our brother was able to get through. I've been checking, is Kwame on anyone's line right now?
Yeah, I think Kwame's here.
All right, so let me introduce our last speaker, Brother Kwame Shakur. And we mentioned earlier, and this is important, he's not going to say anything about his own case. Okay, we know from Mamiya how that is. You know, our freedom fighters that are captured deal with being freedom fighters. But Kwame is follows in the tradition of Malcolm X and Comrade George Jackson and Ruchell McGee and all those who were captured dealing with social crimes and trying to exist in this country. And then politicized themselves and became revolutionaries on the inside. So I just want to say, we need to bring this brother home. He needs to be home in the community, just like he's organizing on the other side, he needs to be on this side. And we're going to be moving forward to make sure that that gets done by really pushing his own individual campaign he's now talking about to make sure this brother comes home, and all the rest of our captured young people or younger people that are still captured. So without any further delay, because they might cut his phone off, Brother Kwame Shakur, you have the floor.
I hit unmute to the number I think is Kwame, but.
Free the land.
Free the land.
Can y'all hear me good?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can hear
we
you.
hear
fine.
you.
All right. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody, first and foremost, who's there in person, and everybody who's watching in from around the country virtually, and all the brothers and sisters on the panel who's there facilitating this and making this happen. So when I put out the call to action and the organizational determination for this panel discussion and webinar in December, I had called Jalil Muntaqim, Barad Sunni Ali, Brother Jihad, Sekou Odinga, and Bro Shep, all those brothers who have been working steadfast since the International Tribunal in 2021. As it's already been mentioned before, you know what I'm saying, in the historical and monumental verdict by international jurists that found the United States guilty of genocide on all 5 counts. And the conversations that have been going on internally amongst all of us is how do we move that guilty verdict forward? How do we turn it into something concrete and tangible that we can introduce to the people, to the movement builders, to the nation builders, and to garner the recognition and support from the international community and our allied nations around the world that would come to our aid and assist us in our crimes, our cries of genocide. And the work that's been done is the development of the People's Senate. It's already been mentioned, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But what I wasn't seeing yet was organizational determination and a way for us to bring all of those movement builders and activists, revolutionary nationalists together and establish a national agenda and a national strategy that would move us towards the development of the People's Senate. And more than talking about why prison life matter or the issues that we're facing on the inside, because I feel like that's been done, you know what I'm saying, with the brothers and sisters so eloquently or just on the panel. So my main aims and objectives with these panels in this webinar is to get all of you in one space, all of our lead thinkers, theoreticians, organizers, and strategists, and figure out what do we do next so that we're not getting on another Zoom conference call or another meeting, having another panel 2 months from now, 6 months from now, talking about the same problems that we're already aware of, that we've already been writing books about, giving lectures on, speaking about for 50 plus years. You know what I'm saying? We're in a critical time right now where we're blessed individuals like myself to be able to work in tangent and side by side with members of the original Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, those brothers and sisters and those freedom fighters who led our struggle at what we call the high tide of the 60s and 70s. We're in a privileged position right now where we're not reading about what they did or watching movies about what they did, you know what I'm saying, the way we read about Marcus Garvey and Fanon and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. We're actually side by side. We're in the room with these individuals right now. And so we got to take advantage of that and move the movement forward and uplift our nation. And the only way for that to happen is for us to create decolonization programs, tangible forms of turning theory into practice and action. You know, Vladimir Lenin said that without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolution. But I'm saying without turning that revolutionary theory into action and practice, then it's just a bunch of revolutionary cultural rhetoric. And so Prison Lives Matter was established on the foundation and on the blueprint of the works of Brother Jalil Muntaqim in the 409 Handbook and the 409 National Strategy. 409 is the front for the liberation of the new African nation. And in that national strategy, we have 10 decolonization programs. And in those programs, there's something for every single person within this movement. The child care, the food co-op and agriculture, the Political Prisoners of War Assistance Programs, the National Alliance of New African Students, the Panther Youth Corps, something for everybody, you know what I'm saying? And so what we want to see come out of this webinar and out of these panel discussions is people stepping up and joining this organization, joining this movement and this united front and the coalition, the Spirit of Mandela, and letting us know who you are, who your organization is, the work that you're already doing. So Brother Jihad said last night, and what we have laid out in the People's Senate Explanation of Recruitment Manual, we're not asking you to compromise your morals, your principles, your vision statement or mission statement. It's about all of us coming together and establishing that national agenda and national strategy. Right now, we're so fragmented and sectarianism is running rampant throughout our movement and our nation. And all we're doing is reducing our own power against our common enemy. And we're saying the same things, we're reading from the same text, but yet in California, Chicago, New York, Indiana, Detroit, Atlanta, we're not coming together and finding that collective ideology and that collective policy that'll move us forward together. And so the way that Prison Life Matter is structured is on a national coordinating committee. And right now, since 2017, that national coordinating committee is made up of some of our nation's leading political prisoners, prison formations on the inside, as well as former political prisoners and POWs and outside abolitionists and revolutionary nationalist organizations and formations. In recent years, we broke that national coordinating committee down into regional organizing committees that will allow us to build statewide chapters and structures. And the main goal of Prison Life Matter in terms of building infrastructure is creating the inside-outside coordination. We know that in every single state across Turtle Island, we have people on the outside doing revolutionary nationalist and prison abolition work. We know that in every single prison, in every single state across Turtle Island, we have individuals on the inside doing this work and resisting. So it's about all of us connecting the dots and putting those people in your region, in your state, in tune with the people on the inside that's doing that work so that we can establish that infrastructure and move this thing forward that we're now calling the People's Senate. And, you know what I'm saying, Jihad alluded to this last night in his closing statement in the opening plenary, that throughout history there's been a continuous movement of revolutionary theory, a continuum of people doing revolutionary work, abolition work. But he said what we're not seeing is people turning that theory into practice and action. And what we're trying to do with Spirit of Mandela, with Prison Life Matter, and the New African Liberation Collective, and the People's Senate, is trying to give individuals the tools through education and a political line that would allow us to build and sustain that infrastructure and that work by turning theory into practice and action. Jalil and myself was talking last night after the opening plenary, and I mentioned that we were in here engaging in our Black August study, and we were breaking down meditations on Frantz Fanon's Wretched to the Earth. And throughout Wretched to the Earth, Fanon constantly talks about the fundamental transition period in a national liberation struggle. And I feel that over 90% of our movement people fail to grasp what it is that he's talking about and what he was trying to tell us. And I say that because you look at organizations and movement people in this country that's been doing this work for 50 plus years, and some of them are still remaining stagnant or not understanding themselves why we aren't at a higher tide or why we haven't reached the level that we were at in the 60s and 70s. And that's because we have this romanticized fantasy of what national liberation looks like, of what abolition looks like. Is this just because we believe in national liberation or we believe in socialism and prison abolition that we're going to get on some January 6th shit and overthrow this nation and this government and overthrow capitalism in one swift uprising? And we're so neo-colonized as a people that we can't get out of that reactionary mind state of slowing down and developing aims and objectives for us to work towards in terms of building infrastructure and the arduous task of cadre development and cadre training. And when you look at some of our nations over in the motherland that are still struggling to this day, that won their independence and their autonomy during the anti-colonial struggles, and the reason that they're in the state that they are now is because they didn't go through the fundamental transition period during the national liberation struggle. And that is developing decolonization programs at every level, on the educational, economical, political, cultural, and agricultural level, of developing these programs in every community and every region so that we know how to sustain ourselves, so that we can cut that umbilical cord from the oppressor, from the class enemy and the bourgeoisie. Right now, if they were to abolish all of these prisons and let us out, if they were to allow us to separate from their birth certificates and social security numbers and truly be a free, independent group of people, what would we do? As Brother Jihad said last night, in 2023, most of us don't even have food and vegetables growing in our backyards because we're so neo-colonized, we're caught up in this material world of capitalism with that umbilical cord. We know that we can go to Walmart right now and get food. We can go to McDonald's and get food. We can go online on Amazon and buy clothes and have it shipped to our house the next day. So our brains aren't programmed towards self-determination and self-sustainability. And that's what we want to leave with after Sunday, after Chicago and California's panel discussion and webinars, is figuring out who is in this crowd right now, who's listening on these calls right now, that's going to show up, it's going to contact us by email, it's going to show up in person at these events and say, how do I get involved? This is what my organization is doing. This is where I fall in on the educational, economical, political, spiritual, cultural, military, one of these levels. Somebody that's listening, everybody that's in that room can play a part on one of those levels, on one of those fronts. And we got programs for decolonization for every single one of you. So we want to know, when do we meet?
You have 1 minute remaining.
We want to know, when do we meet up in New York next week? Where are we meeting up at? Where are we meeting up at Chicago next week? Where are we meeting up in Oakland and San Francisco next week? Where are we meeting up in Philly next week? Where we can sit down and discuss these issues and figure out where we're going to have these cadre classes at, where are we going to have these political education classes at, so we can move this agenda forward.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. And closing us out for this evening. I want to thank everyone that joined us online, in person. And again, to remind you, we're not done yet with this conference or this 3-day weekend to liberate our elders. Tomorrow, we want folks to come on and tune in. I see our folks from Oakland and Chicago here.
Thank you for using ETL.
Make sure you please put the contact information you have in the chat so everybody can get that. In addition to that, I will be blasting out as long as they let me. I got cut off last night. That's why people didn't get a reminder this morning and last night. But it's all good. We still got here and we're going to keep moving And I'm just gonna do is put the call. What's the call? What's the call? What's the call?
Three more.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be hearing and seeing you tomorrow. Okay, before people start racing out the door, we're gonna do one group picture since we're here. This is history. Right here. Unless you also want to come to you, we can sit around your chair. We can do it right here, since the camera's there and all the cameras there. You got the seats here for the short people. Get that picture with you. Ryan, keep your picture up.
Say that again?
I said, keep your picture up. We're gonna put that in the photo.
Okay. I'm gonna keep the Zoom going until you take the picture.
Okay. Somebody grab the red, black, and green. Oh. Anybody gonna sit or you don't need to?
Well, you want to sit down?
Some people need to
I'll
know
sit.
too, why.
Yeah, I'll sit down. I'm getting old.
Yeah, right.
Beauty before age.
Oh, yeah, sit down, please. You do. I can have to mention you sit down. Okay. It's just that.
I'm so black and this thing makes me short.
I didn't bring the big one. All that.
That's good. That's enough.
Yeah, that's good.
So what we doing?
So who's doing
Who's
it?
taking a picture? Me? You?
No, I'm gonna take it.
Okay. Then you have
You
to.
take it. Yeah, you take it.
If he doesn't get it, or he comes back.
He made a choice. Yeah, you can, yeah, you can close, turn it, shut it off. Well, first you can take it out of the tripod, unless it's framed. Oh, by the way, any of y'all that know folks that are into photography, filmmaking and videography, we're pulling together.
Open it again. I just want to make sure the video's not running anymore.
Folks in the background, so we can start documenting what we
And
do.
so it's not recording, right? The red recording light. Okay, so the still button is the one up on top, the little silver one up on top. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, oh no, that's.
You want to use the
that's what
camera?
you want. Take some of that and then we'll switch.
Got it.
Where's the fist? There you go.
What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free
them all.
What's the call?
Free them
Three
all.
more.
Now we need to get one with him in.
Huh? Yeah, I have this right there. You know how to use that? The Canon? No?
Yeah, while you're ready, turn back around, turn back around. This is gonna be video, so that shows the live.